Today's program goes to the core of the City Club's premier issue, rebuilding a sense of community, and to the current subtopic, conflict in society. The Portland region, inner city and suburbs alike, has and is experiencing its share of community distress from the impacts of youth violence. The tears in the community and neighborhood fabric caused by youth gangs are only the most visible manifestation of this violence. As we know, we're not alone with this concern. Communities throughout the nation are attempting to deal with the root causes and the effects of youth violence. Today we'll hear from a public official who is on the front lines with this issue in the Pacific Northwest. Here with us also to introduce our speaker and to join her in the question and answer period after the presentation is one of the outstanding local law enforcement officials and leaders that we, and for that matter, the Clinton administration, can think of. Our city's own Chief of Police, Charles Moose. Please join me in welcoming Chief Moose back to the Portland City Club.
Good afternoon. Certainly brings me great pleasure, indeed an honor, to be here to introduce your speaker today, the prosecuting attorney from Thurston County up in the Olympia, Washington land, Benardean Broadous. And I guess when you're doing an introduction, there's several strategies one can take. Certainly I can tell you all about her education. I can tell you about all of the wonderful and terrific jobs that she's held over the years. But I guess in some ways what we're really here to talk about is the fact that she is committed to trying to influence the young people in our community that are in such trouble. That she is here in this world today trying to make an effort and to make a difference about youth violence. That she's here to talk about working with teens, training people to stay out of gangs, and talking to us as adults about what our role in the scenario, what is our role in the grand picture. So we're really honored to have her. She's a graduate of the University of Puget Sound Law School. For those of you that don't know, I think that's now known as the Seattle University Law School. Just last year, that transition was made when Seattle U purchased the University of Puget Sound. And it may sound to you, coming from a police officer, that maybe I know too much about that scenario, but the reason is that my wife attends the same university. So I probably do know too much about it. In terms of being a prosecuting attorney, as a police officer, I know that we really depend on our prosecuting attorney, that there are a lot of decisions and there's a lot of influence. But again, Benardean is willing to put on an additional hat. As the chairperson for Stop the Violence, a community-based program targeting preventing youth from becoming violent in our community, she's shown that degree of commitment that goes beyond just having a job. She's shown that commitment that goes beyond just being a person that drives into work and takes care of the issues at work and then drives home and works on their resume. She's out in the community, she's involved, and I also want you to understand that she has regional and national impact with regards to the kind of things that she's gonna bring to you today. So if you'll join me in giving a great Portland welcome to the prosecuting attorney from Thurston County, Benardean Broadous.
I've often wanted to stand behind a podium and then immediately disappear. That didn't happen. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Could you help me? This is fine right here. I am indeed delighted and privileged to be with you this afternoon. I really appreciate the invitation to talk with you. I'm a youth advocate, and sometimes the youth say to me, Ms. Broadous, how can you be a youth advocate and you are also a prosecuting attorney? That doesn't seem to kind of work together. And what I do is I let them know how it works together, and that's what I'm going to share, some of the things I'm going to share with you this afternoon on how those two really can work together. I was born in Arkansas, bred in Arkansas, raised in Arkansas, but I do not know Mr. Clinton. I'm from a little town called Texarkana, Arkansas, which is twin city of Arkansas and Texas. I have deep roots in family. My family's last name is Broadous, and we are very huge in that we now boast 360 plus. I want to tell you just a little bit about my family so you'll know who I am. Oh, by the way, I need a timer. May I borrow a watch? I work for the government. I can't afford one. I don't want to go over my time. As an attorney, you know what they say about lawyers. We talk. And I guess if you watch the Simpson trial, you could say that's true. But a little bit about me. My family, the Broadous family, my grandmother had 21 children. Great woman. 19 of them survived to beyond age 3 months. And the 19 children then went out and married and had children of their own and started their own families. And I guess they took my grandfather's words to heart that he took from the Bible, be fruitful and multiply. And they went all out and started having babies also, 12 and 13 at a pop, or so to speak. But from that, what my grandparents taught us is that family is very important to the fabric of our society. Without family, we fail to function as a decent and a functional society. What they taught us is that you, as a Broadous, have to make a contribution to society. How do you do that to your community or in your community? Well, you start in your own home. Charity does begin at home. And so what we learned is that you do well in your home, teach the kinds of values you want your community to have, and then you go out and you help impart those values in your community. And so that's all I grew up to know. I know that in order to help make my community a better place, I have to be part of that. And because I am a Broadous, I don't have a choice in the matter. That's what I was taught to do. Those original 19 children realized that some of our traditions really needed to be passed on, I guess, forever. And so we began, or they, because I wasn't around at that point, decided that we ought to form make our family operate sort of like a corporation. So the original 19 brothers and sisters formed the board of directors. And then, because we are so large and we have family reunions, originally it was once every year, but because the family grew and we all went all over the country, it was decided later on that the reunions would be every 3 years, and we always had them to begin on my grandfather's birthday, June 30th. Well, because of the size of the family, we then decided, or they then decided, that we ought to have regional groups and organizations. So we have officers. I know some people think, you have officers in your family? Well, somebody got to keep these folks in line, right? All right, so we have officers. We have the Pacific Northwest region, and here the base is in Portland, which takes up Oregon, Washington, Idaho, Utah. And then we have the South, Southwest, North, Midwest. I mean, we have all those regions, and each region had their own set of officers. We all get together on a regular basis, at least twice a year, sometimes 3 times a year, and each region designates the time that they're going to get together, be it Christmas, Thanksgiving, or Memorial Day, whatever. And what we do is we pass on all the things that we were taught by our forefathers, and we try to pass those on to the generations coming. Now, I don't want to stand here and make you think that my family is this great, everybody is just peachy, because we're not. None of us are angels, first of all. Some of us are a little less than others, and when it comes to the scale of being good and evil. But we're all blood, and we're all relatives, and so we're all family. And for us, when we have family that we can help, chastise, commend, celebrate with. That's what we do, because we know if we do it in our family, that our family will make the same impact in the community. That if you see a child who is wayward, you can help that child by giving correction. The topic that you have and that we're dealing with today, babies killing babies, how can we curb youth violence? I say make sure that our foundation is solid. Family is a foundation. Family is the key to having a great community. One of the things that I read in your publication is that youth violence is a devastating and crippling. Those two adjectives, devastating and crippling. It's like a virus, you know, and it's just spreading from big cities to smaller cities or small towns like Thurston County, which is a little small town, about 180,000 in the whole county. But what it's not doing is leaving the big cities. It's just spreading to little unsuspecting places like Thurston County where I live. And how can I make a difference? In my neighborhood, what I do is I work with youth and adults. I wear two hats. Sometimes I wear 5 or 6, but I have 2 major hats: the prosecuting attorney and chair of Stop the Violence. And to me, this is a more important one, because this is prevention. This is how I can keep those kids from coming to see me on the prosecuting attorney side. What can I do to help curb youth violence? Well, I can set up, or I can help set up programs in the community. What are we doing in Thurston County? As chair of Stop the Violence, we decided that the police, and I know Chief Moose is doing a great job, but he can't do it by himself. Or can he? Maybe he is super, I don't know. I don't believe he can do it by himself. So what did we say at Stop the Violence? We said, let's mobilize the community. Let's get people in the community to take hold of what this problem is, or to take hold of this problem, to not let it paralyze us, to not let this virus spread. You know, when people hear about a virus, they all want to know, like, you know, what can we do to cure this? I mean, how can we make this thing go away? Well, if we start backwards and say, what could we have done to prevent this? We'd be in much better shape. And that's where Stop the Violence come in. Mobilize a community. How do we do that? What we did is said, young people are born into this world, little babies, born here. They learn behavior. None of them decided one day, oh, think I'll be a cocaine addict. Think I'll be a murderer. Think I'll be a rapist. Think I'll be a gangster. They didn't just wake up and decide that. They learned that somewhere. And they learned it through a series of influences and factors in their lives. How can the community respond to that? How can the community prevent some of that from happening? Well, according to my grandmother and grandfather, we try to start in the home. Well, you say there are too many dysfunctional homes these days. And you are absolutely right. But that does not mean that you are without resources. How can you affect change? You get the community to work together. Get involved. You are here and you belong or are part of this particular group because you want to make a difference and because you are getting involved. But how can you get other people involved? You can get them involved by saying, if the police, if the schools, if the nonprofit organizations, if the local governments, city governments, the medical field, mental and physical health, if all those people were working together, if we put all of those resources together and direct them toward our young people, what an impact we could make. I know that a lot of people are doing a lot of things because I see it in different communities. I saw it in Thurston County. There were, what do we call it, shotgun approach to this, people doing this and all over the place. But what we said would stop the violence is come together. Be a cooperative and collaborative unit. Bringing all those resources together and seeing how we can help young people. Because we can. They want to be helped. Do you know that with Stop the Violence, I have a youth advisory council, and I have young people who are A students, D students. They cross all ethnic and socioeconomic lines. But when they get into that youth advisory council together, when we meet twice a month, they are just kids. First of all, I get them there by feeding them pizza and pop. Because in order to talk to them, you got to be able to attract them. So you bring them in with the pizza and pop, and then you let them talk about what they want to, get everything off their chest, and then you give them a little direction. Not all at once, a little at a time. Just a little bit at a time. Making that little bit of a difference. And I've seen young people who were borderline gang members change their minds and decided that, well, that's not quite the way I really want my life to be. I've seen young people who were able to persuade others and say, this is not the way. You don't want to really do that. It looks good. It's attractive now. And it appears that it'll be profitable to you. But it won't be. Who best can help other young people but their peers? I mean, I can stand up and talk to kids until I'm blue in the face, which will take a lot of doing, by the way. And you know what? Will they listen to me? Maybe. But if I bring some other young people along, they will hear them because those are their peers. And the peers know what's really happening. You want to know how to solve this violence issue? Talk to young people. In the schools, if you talk to young people, they will tell you who is bringing the gun, who has the knife, where the fight's going to be, where's the robbery going. They tell you because they know. They know all of this stuff. But often, adults don't take advantage of that. In the Youth Advisory Council, I'm not only their advocate for them during their sessions and when they're planning. I go out in the community and I try to strong-arm adults and say, listen, I want you to hear what these young people have to say. This is what they're talking about. Here's how we can make some changes to make a better society, to make a better community. Get involved. That's what I say. 2 words, 2 simple words. Get involved. And how can you do that? Volunteering takes a lot of time. It's time consuming. Okay, so, well, let me tell you how much time young people have on their hands. Approximately 3,000 hours of free time during the year. Now, that's a lot of time. I'm not a mathematician and I'm not great at calculation. That's why I went to law school. But I will tell you that when you say 3,000 hours, I have this written down because I know I wouldn't remember this. 24 hours in a day, approximately 30 days in a month. That gives you 720 hours a month. 12 months in the year gives us approximately 8,640 hours in a year. Okay, kids go to school 6 hours a day. You give them a couple of hours for transportation to and from, 8 hours of sleep, maybe they might sleep 10. Anyway, you end up with about 16, 18 hours a day. What in the world are they doing with the 8 hours left? What are they doing? More importantly, what are we doing with them? Doing all that free time. And then, of course, when summer comes, they have more free time because nothing's happening. School is out, so, we lose that 8 hours unless they're in some particular program. So what is happening? One of the things that I really encourage us to do is to act before it happens. In Thurston County, when I saw 3.5 years ago, I saw some of the early signs of gang problems. How did I see that? Because I used to live in Los Angeles, and I knew what to look for. And I was a deputy prosecuting attorney in King County. And so I was watching. I was able to put all of that information together. And I said to my people in Thurston County, I said, this is coming, this is here. This is not coming, it's here. Oh, no, they said to me. You're just making that up. We don't have a problem here. And I said, yes, we do. And here are some of the reasons I think we do. No. So they just disregarded my comments. And unfortunately, in November of 1993, a young man was stabbed to death because of the color of clothing he was wearing. Now, that may be commonplace in some big cities, but for Thurston County, that was like shocking, totally shocking. And I had been saying it for a year and a half. But that's what it took before my county woke up. So I'm saying to you, it's not too late. Volunteer. Act before it happens. How can you do that? With your time and with your money. I'm not rich, so I don't have a whole bunch of money to give. But I do have a lot of time to give. So I get 5 or 6 hours of sleep. It's worth it if during those 8 hours a day, approximately 30 hours, 3,000 hours a year that young people have free time, that they are not burglarizing my community or my home. Because I'm telling you, they're doing something with that free time, constructive or destructive. And how can you influence them? By bringing your communities together, getting people to work together. I mean, I believe that it's so exciting. You know what we're doing now in Thurston County? The newspaper, the radio stations, our prominent media people, and our police, a lot of local officials and nonprofit organizations are coming together, and we're talking and we're grouping on how to address these young people, to address the problem with them. Because they have a lot going on in their lives, and they are looking for direction. And to whom do they look? We're adults. That's who they look for, direction. Oh, sometimes they do this and pretend that they're resisting and all that sort of stuff. But they really want guidelines. They're looking for guidelines. So we've come together and we're trying to put up what we think will, some programs that we think will be helpful. And we're not designing these programs ourselves. We go to the young people. My Youth Advisory Council is a source. During our meetings, after they finish their pizza and pop, and finish talking about what's going on and get all that stuff off their chest, you know, their girlfriend, their boyfriend, what happened at school today, Mr. So-and-so didn't do this, whatever. When they finish, then we talk about issues that affect them. I take those issues back and I say, here are what the young people are saying. And also, here are their suggestions. We put those suggestions together to help make them work. We are having a career fair. Now, we started a program called Just Hire One. You know what Just Hire One does? It brings the employer and the potential employee teams together with our job service center as the component that matches these people. We are able to ask employers to just hire one youth, one, for the summer, just one. If every employer would hire a team for 20 hours a week during the summer, those 3,000 hours would go way down, 3,000 hours of free time. It was so successful last year, we decided that we wanted to expand it. So what we decided is that a career fair, getting young people to think about career opportunities. Do you know that sometimes youth now don't even think beyond next year, the next 6 months? So we're saying to them, there is hope, young people. And what we want you to do is think about, what do you want to do with your life? Where do you want to be? How do you see yourself? And you're like, what? I just want to graduate. But we say, no, look beyond graduation. Where do you want to be after you graduate? And getting them to begin thinking about that. And at this career fair, we're going to have different people from different occupations, airline pilots, mechanics, professionals of all kinds, doctors, lawyers, electricians, plumbers, secretaries, whatever we can think of, have those people there. And then these young people will be able to talk with them and see what careers are all about. And I can tell you just from my experience, and I can't talk to you a lot about theories because I don't know a lot about theories. I know what works. I know that when young people are working, those little idle hands cannot be the devil's workshop. I know that when I volunteer to help that person, no matter how small the time is, it makes a difference in that child's life. Adults often undervalue their commitment, their volunteer time to young people. They think, oh, 1 hour won't make a difference, 2 hours won't make that much difference. Do you know why I'm standing here today? Because individuals volunteered their time to me. Not just one person. In the vernacular of my great-grandmother, a whole bunch of somebodies. A whole bunch of them. But collectively, they made a difference. I have never been Miss Goody Two-Shoes. No. I've always been outspoken, yes, but never Miss Goody Two-Shoes. But I've always had somebody to get me back on the right track. And you never know whose life and where in that life you're affecting that young person. And that doesn't stop at age 20, by the way. Speaking of age 20, my 20-year-old daughter is getting married, and she called yesterday from California with a crisis. Her wedding date is August. I mean, what crisis can she have today? But to her, it's a crisis. So, mom responds, talks to her, alleviates, a little anxiety, and she's fine. But you multiply that in the kind of world we live in violence. We're surrounded by violence. And sometimes I think we have become immune to it. We've become, I think the word now is desensitized to violence. Don't be desensitized to it. Give your time as much as you can. Give your monies. Not giving so that, I heard someone say, so there can be a photo opportunity. Not for that. But be committed to making a change in a young person's life. Every change that you make in one young person's life, that young person will affect many young people. And that's what Stop the Violence is all about. It's about affecting one so that that one can affect tens and hundreds, because they do. The earlier we can get to young people, the better. I understand that by the time a child is 4 years old, that child has learned his or her parenting skills. Now that is a very scary thought. You think about 4-year-olds. What in the world do they do besides having temper tantrums? And that's a parenting skill? What are we teaching them? What have they been taught? Dr. Osaki told me at the table a few minutes ago that I believe it was in the Oregonian this past Sunday maybe, that there was a statement by a young person who said, if adults blame us for violence, I believe that's how it went, then they need to blame themselves for being barbarians. Children do not learn this stuff by osmosis. They see things. So we pattern for them whatever it is that we decide, or however it is we decide we want to pattern our lives so that they can take advantage of it. I understand that your mission, the City Club mission, is to inform its members and the community in public matters, and to arouse in them a realization of the obligation of citizenship. I say the essence of your obligation is to volunteer. Whatever it is you can volunteer. It can make a difference. It will make a difference. Let me tell you something else we're doing in Thurston County. You know when kids really want to get out of gangs? It's when they see former gang members out. Now what we do, or we're just beginning to do this, is use former gang members to talk to the community at large. And then set up a support group. So when those young kids, we have community forums, and we talk about a lot of things. Domestic violence, because that's, gang violence is not the only violence around. There are lots of different kinds of violence. But we have community forums where we can do exactly what your mission says. But with these young people who are now former gang members, they can talk and say, I can tell you what it's like to be in a room where I can stretch my hands and reach both sides of the wall. That's reality. And these young people who are now former gang members can help reaching out that hand to others, to those who really want to get out. Because there are a lot of kids who want to get out of gangs. They just don't know how. They're afraid for their lives. Initially, some of them joined them because of what they perceive to be the safety net. Because when you're being recruited by gang members, they throw their arms around you and they say, come on, we're going to do this, and I've got your back, and I've done all this sort of stuff, and I'll kill for you, and all these sorts of things. That's what they say. How much of it they do is another story. But it's enough to get some kids in, because some youth are just looking for a place to belong. They just want a family. And to them, that's family. That's it. Now, how many mothers said to you, come, I'll watch your back, I'll die for you? Who, what? No. I've never heard my mother say that. My grandmother, none of my aunts, none of my cousins, none. I've never heard them say that to me. But I did hear my mom say, I brought you into this world and I'll take you out. And I listened to her too, even though she's only 5'2" and I'm 5'7". I was 5'7" when I was 16 years old, but I still listened to my mother. But the sense of family is what it's all about. And that's what I'm trying to connect today, is that when whatever your family is, the City Club is a family. However you decide you're going to operate as a family, you're it. You can put your arm around those young people. You can put your arm around the people here in Portland, your schools. Do you know that the high school principal is probably the key or the most important person in a child's life? And why do I say that? And that's because the principals set the tone. They set the tone in the schools. They decide the policies, how it's going to work. Right here in Portland, one of my cousins is a high school principal. There are certain things he just does not allow, period. He will not allow sagging, bagging, coloring, signing. It's not happening. He just won't let it happen. They come in with their pants about. I often wonder if these things are going to fall off. I just wonder that. I mean, they're so low. But if they come in, he brings out his duct tape. He walks up to them, and they don't see the tape, of course. And then he says, young man, why are your pants so low? And of course, you know, young men these days are real quick. Well, why are yours so high around your waist? So he says, because I want them there, and because I'm the principal, yours are going to be there. And he pulls them up and just begins to wrap it around. What do they say? They know that he won't allow that in his school. Young people want guidelines. They want to know where the borders are. You tell them. That's for us to tell them. We tell them when we volunteer, because we are showing compassion and we're showing that we care. We tell them when we give money, because money is what makes programs run. However, I will say this. I don't believe that it takes a whole lot of money to run programs. I think it takes volunteers, the energies that you and I have. Because in the African American community, or in the African community, there is a slogan or a saying that it takes a whole village to raise a child, and it does. And in my family, everybody who was older than me could help raise me. And I will tell you that I listen to them. And young people will listen to the voices today if we show love, compassion, respect, and that we mean business. That we are not just giving lip service, but that we mean everything we say because we're doing it. Just because I'm an elected official now and I'm very busy, and I am, I do not stop my Stop the Violence work. I don't stop it. I continue with it. And I'm not out in the community just for lip service and just for a show. I'm trying to continue to make a difference because others made a difference in my life, and I got to continue to make this difference now for these young people. Because if I don't, they'll be burglarizing my home. I don't have that much stuff for people to be taken away. I need my little bit of stuff. I worked hard for it, and I want to keep it. You feel the same also, I'm sure. So when you see those young people walking around with saying things that you don't quite understand, because I don't always understand what they're saying either, but I do ask. But when you see them with their pants hanging down or about to fall off, whichever, what do you think about? What gang group they belong to? Do you think about, am I in trouble? Do you think about, where's the parent? What do you think about? Well, I will encourage you today to think about the duct tape. Think about the duct tape. What can your duct tape be? You can't hear me. I'm sorry. Think about the duct tape. What will your duct tape be? Will it be working 2 hours a week, 3 hours a week? Will it be donating to an organization that you know is doing something, not one that's just taking money and skimming off the top? Because you do have to watch for those. What will it be? How many hours can you give? Why do kids join gangs? Because they want to be in a family. That's all. What kind of family can we provide for them? I wish that I could provide for this whole nation the kind of family that I have, because I know I'm very blessed to have families like that. When I was running for public office, I had family who came up to help in the campaign. They helped in the celebration, they helped in passing out leaflets, signs, making signs, and all this sort of stuff. When somebody is sick in our family, we go to that person. We either send a delegation or something to that effect. I wish that I could say that we had a nation where when something is wrong, and I'm not talking about the welfare system either, but when something is wrong, we can go and get some help from someone, because I can do that in my family. We have a Broadous family fund. And from that fund, when someone has befallen some circumstances beyond their control, not when they fail to manage properly, but some circumstance beyond their control and they need help, there we are. That's what we're about. That's what family is. That's what the City Club of Portland is about. You all are not here for your health today. You're here because you do want to make a difference. And I'm just here to encourage you to continue whatever work you've started. And remember that you will make a difference in a young person's life when you volunteer something. I will close with this. Sometimes the answer is right before our very eyes. I saw a young lady who, or listened to rather, a young lady who was in middle school. And she said, you know, I was listening to a man come to our school from the police department. And he was telling us how important it was for us to turn in information. And he told us about those posters you see with all those pictures on them. If you have any information, or if you see anybody that looks like this, or know anything about this, anybody that you see up there on these pictures, call the police and turn that information in. And she said, but what I didn't understand was, why didn't they keep them when they took the pictures? They had them right in their hands, and they let them go. You have those resources. You can stop the violence just by having the kind of family attitudes and passing them on to young people. They want your help. When they push you away or they attempt to push you away, just disregard that, because they really want your help. The young people who started coming to the Youth Advisory Council, and they used to sit in the back with their hands folded like this and looking at me like that, coming in with their little walk and everything. I just said, hey, come on in. I kept feeding them pizza. They kept coming back. And eventually, 3 out of 4 of those young men changed their lives. Now, those 3 young men are going to change a whole bunch of other lives. They're doing it already, because that support group I told you about, they are part of that. You can make a difference. You have the answer right in your hands. The duct tape. You can do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bernadine, for that inspiration. Now it's time for questions from the City Club members. Please use the microphone, identify yourself by name, and as a member, you can direct your question to either of our guests today or to both of them if you'd like. And the first question we have is from Mona Ozaki. Mona?
I have two questions. My first question is, can I apply for an entry-level position in your family? The second question is a little more serious. One of my heroes is Marian Wright Edelman, and one of the lessons she has for her children, all of ours, is assign yourself, and that's what your theme has been today. And I care a lot about little children as well as the children you're talking about, and would you give us some suggestions about how we can assign ourselves around helping little children not be violent?
One of the things that I often talk to older teens about, and that is to get them to look at violence. Why is it that young people on the playground in first and second grades, when they have a misunderstanding, why do they immediately resort to duking it out instead of thinking about how they can talk it out? And so when you're in a position, and I know that Dr. Osaki is, when you're in a position to affect those young lives, that's what you do. You go to them before they get to that teenage stage. I know that there are some studies, again, I'm not into theories, but there are some studies that show if we can get to young boys before age 9, we can really make a difference in their lives. And so the sooner you can get to them. I tell parents, go to those schools and be in the schools. You have a right to be there to see what's going on. Preschool as well. Be part of that. Kids need to see. And then when children come to you with an issue, listen, because almost always there is something going on. They may not be able to articulate it to you very well, but I know something is going on. So just listen up.
I'm done. I think that's the next person.
Thank you for your moving presentation. I wonder, I think I can ask this to you here. You're away from your home territory. Perhaps it won't be so embarrassing. I wonder, you want volunteers and you want money. In your current situation in Thurston County, what do you need more, volunteers or money?
That's a very hard question. I honestly believe more volunteers, because you can only do so much with money. People are the greater resource. You can take, usually what happens when you start out with a group, you have a core of people who do a lot of work, but if you have more people, you could do more work. So my sense is, I can't prove this, but my sense is that we need more volunteers. Even in Thurston County, and we've started doing some very good work, but there's a lot to do. So the more people that we can bring in, the better off we're going to be. Because the more people who stand up and say, I will be committed, the more young people will look, because they watch what we do, not what we say.
Thank you.
Andrew Wheeler, member. The title today is about babies killing babies. Babies, kids, kill themselves too. Teen suicide is on the increase. A gun in the house reinforces the inclination and facilitates the fatal act. Fathers kill babies too. Take the recent incident of a father killing his daughter while fiddling with his gun. It's dangerous to have guns in the house. Chief Moose, are there any programs out there that reduce the likelihood of these tragedies?
Yes, and certainly I think that there's not enough, but we really need to give support to our political leaders that are trying to put more gun control, that are willing to stand up and talk about the issues. Just very briefly, want to express my admiration that former President Bush has finally made a decision about his membership in the NRA. I guess more on a local level, the timeliness is certainly perfect. This Saturday and next Saturday, May 13th and May 20th, the Ceasefire Oregon will be having their second gun turn-in. As you know, these same weekends last year, we had the first ceasefire gun turn-in. Here in Portland, it was done in a fashion that there were no monies, there were no public monies involved, and there was no cash given to any of the people that turned in weapons. It was all services, medical visits, dental visits, food certificates, all donations from the general public for services for people that have weapons to turn in. And for those of you that don't recall, during those 2 days last year, we had 690 firearms turned in. So those firearms were removed from the community from some of those situations that you so readily described. And out of that, only 11 of those firearms had at some point been reported stolen. So what we really have is that we have people that have firearms in the home because they've been passed down through the family. Perhaps they've had a friend purchase that gun for them and try to convince them that they need it for self-protection. Situations change. They've made decisions about their lives. But quite frankly, when you've got a gun, sometimes it's very difficult to know what to do with it, even when you want to get rid of it. So this program allowed those people to turn in 690 firearms to get them out of our community. And certainly, I'm very proud of it because it is a citizen event. It was not run by the police bureau. It was not run through the mayor's office. It didn't come from government. The group of citizens that are very concerned, they got together. They said, this is what we think we can do. Called on people that they knew in the community, gathered those resources, have put together the public message, and make this program work. Now, certainly we participate in terms of checking the firearms and collecting them, and then standing by very proudly as we melt them down and remove them permanently from our community.
Gail Johnson, City Club member. Either of the guests can respond to this. One of the things that you mentioned, and I think is very, very true, is people don't recognize what the signs are for gang members. They think that this child that's in my home is just doing fashion things. Could you explain or tell us a few of those signs so that people in the community and parents will be able to recognize what they are?
Well, I'm going to defer to Chief Moose because he's put out a great pamphlet. In fact, I'm going to take it back to Thurston County and let us share in it, because there are some specific signs and then there are some changing signs.
Yes, and one of the things that we certainly always want to be cognizant of is that in today's environment there are some fashion statements, and so you just really are going to have to work hard as an adult and as a parent that we are not about the business of saying that khaki pants and plaid shirts correlate to a gang member, because I have both of those. You know, when I attended the FBI Academy, all of the National Academy students had to wear a red shirt and khaki pants. That didn't make us gang members. But what we really want parents and adults to focus on is behavior. We want them to know what their young people are doing. We want to know who they're hanging out with, what kind of conversations they're having, what kind of activities are they being involved in. That it just says that you've got to focus on the behavior, the police have to focus on the behavior. I was privileged yesterday to attend a portion of an anti-gang regional conference that's taking place here in Portland out at the Sheraton Hotel. And so we had police officials from Seattle, from Pierce County Sheriff's Office, and Lieutenant Foxworth from the Portland Police Bureau. And as that panel worked through some issues about gangs and violence, they actually asked a couple of things. They said, perhaps in the future, our community could start refer to us as peacekeepers instead of cops and police officers. And two, that instead of having gang units, why don't we have anti-violence units? Because when you talk about violence, that's really what's destroying our community. And we put too much focus on the gang piece and not the violence, because as Benardean so clearly stated, domestic violence is also destroying our community, and we need to also focus there. But I guess to answer your question, I'm saying we want to focus on behavior, and in order to focus on behavior, you have to spend time with young people, you have to talk to them, you have to listen to them, and you have to go where they go and be involved in their lives. That level of involvement is how you recognize what kind of activity they're going to be involved in.
And young people's behavior they will tell you about it if you don't already recognize it. And the clothing is really a misnomer, so to speak, because now they have become so sophisticated. They don't even do this slacking and stuff again as much as they used to. In Centralia, Washington, there was a gang that was so sophisticated, had been there for years, right before everybody's eyes, and was doing all kinds of things. And what they were doing, their behavior, nobody recognized them because they didn't identify what they were doing with them. And these people were wearing suits and ties, and they were gangs, and they belonged to gangs, and they were getting together and forming all of their, their packs and their plans at a time and at a place where everybody least suspected. And during the day, they walked around looking just like you and I.
Next question.
Ray Polani, a City Club member. I couldn't agree with you more that the family is the all-important thing. However, what about television?
What about television? That is probably one of the biggest problems we have because there's profit in it. And it's going to be very difficult to get to get something minimized when profit is the bottom line. I can only say it just takes a lot of hard work, and as I indicated earlier, in Thurston County, the media has become one of our great allies because they have taken the responsibility that they are part of what's happening in our community. If you can't get to them to see that what they put on the television tube does impact our young people, it's going to be very difficult for you. If you know people who are on these boards, if you're part of your television, whatever it happens to be, I know you have local television because I see these people back here with these cameras on, and so they have a responsibility as well. Locally, nationally, you can write sponsors. Nike does a good job, but you also have to talk to Nike about other things that it does. The beer commercials, talk to them about being responsible. Send things to them. Make them responsible. And sometimes you may even have to boycott, and I'm not suggesting that you do, but I'm just saying you have to think about what does it take to get them to hear your message.
Dan Goldie, member. Here in our legislature, they're about to pass a bill setting up a youth authority to implement a ballot measure 11, but basically we're going to be spending under it millions of dollars to incarcerate youth who have gotten over the line into the juvenile justice system. My question is, what advice would either of you give to our legislature about having some prevention programs written into that bill, such as an extension of the Community Service Corps that gives kids who are in school and are in difficulty a constructive work education alternative to the warehousing that they're experiencing now?
I've been to my legislature, and I'll go again as many times as it takes. Something I learned early on in my life is that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. I don't know why it's so hard to get legislators to see that. I don't understand that, and so I don't try to understand it. What I do is go to them and say, you can pay now, or you can pay triple later, because that's how much it costs to house and feed these people when they're incarcerated. You can spend a small amount now, and then I try to give the example of investment. A lot of you here are investors, I say to the legislators. And how do you invest? When you put your money in a CD, a bank, or whatever, you don't see the returns right away, but that doesn't mean they're not happening. When do you see them? Years later. Well, that's what happens when you invest. You can either invest with something good and positive, or there is the sin of omission. You can not do anything, and you're still investing, and in the product, you'll see by having to spend triple the amount.
I guess I have probably a lot more frustration, and I'm not sure that there's anything that I would feel comfortable saying to our legislators.
I speak out.
I think that in some ways, especially here in the metropolitan area, we may be forced to operate in spite of our legislators, because they've taken a track that is going to be very detrimental, I think, to the metropolitan area. That their failure to recognize our needs with terms of education, providing the proper funding so that we can have a school system in the Portland metropolitan area that is responsive to the needs of our young people, is going to be something that we're going to pay for a lot of years in the future. That if they think they got to build jails now, they think they got to build them now to respond to what's going on. If we don't do a better job of educating our young people and making those services available, when you look at a city like Portland and you still have no summer school, when you still don't have the kind of services to provide people for counseling to help them as they're trying to confront drugs and alcohol at that very tender age of decision making, when you're pulling those people out of the school systems and trying to run them on a skeleton, then I think those are some major problems. I feel like in some ways they feel like they're responding to something they heard about Measure 11 and the need to build jails. But we always need to remember that we can put those young people into the adult system. We have over 1 million people incarcerated in the United States of America, and our crime problem is worse than ever. So if incarceration is indeed the solution, then I don't quite know why we still have this ever-growing problem. So we need to focus on prevention, but it's also a national level issue, because the crime bill fought long and hard to get it passed. Then they decide that all of the prevention is not going to be funded, that it's pork. That, again, where is the message coming from? So I really would want to put the challenge out to groups, to people like us, and say somewhere along the line we've failed our communities because we've not done a good enough job in educating the voters. For some reason, our political representatives think that they're carrying a message that they heard from the voters, and we need to perhaps tell them a different message. And if we've got to step back and educate the voters and educate ourselves and put in political leaders that can be sensitive to what we really need so that we can be the most democratic society in the world, then I think that's where we need to go. And I don't think going to Salem and talking about them is the approach. I think we need to talk to ourselves and say somewhere we got busy with our private issues and we let this thing get out of hand. So we need to go back. The message needs to come from the people, and we need to be the people, and we've got to get out there and do our part again.
On behalf of the members of the club who are here today, and I'm sure our listening audience, want to thank both of you for being with us, sharing your experiences and your advice. Please join me in thanking our guests. We're adjourned.